Hey YouTube, I just wanted to bring you up to speed on the status of the repair on this sporterized Krag rifle stock. If you remember from the previous video, we had removed this with a miter saw, and then this piece I had bought online. This is the sort of the cover for the repair. You can probably see a little bit better. Basically what I did was have two brass rods in here, then I have a piece of galvanized bolt. I don't really recommend that. I'd probably go with a dowel. Drill the holes on the stock itself, blind everything up, and then epoxied it. And then this I'm actually going to use, I have to dress this up a bit, but I'm actually going to use this to sort of cover the repair. Extremely strong. I have full confidence this thing will last almost forever. And I also have cleaned up a lot of the excess epoxy that had squeezed out. I'm going to clean it up a little bit more, and then I have to do some light sanding on this to kind of get this thing nice and dialed in. Both of these pieces are actually walnut, except for this obviously is brand new walnut, and this is 100-year-old walnut. So I've been using scrubbing bubbles to clean this as best I can. You can still see some areas of cosmoline and just old grime and crud and whatnot. Another thing I did also, there was a crack running lengthwise. You can actually see it right about there, probably what's left of it. What I had done is I had drilled into the crack with a drill bit. I don't know if it's actually going to show. There you go. You can actually see the dowel. So I drilled into the crack to kind of drill the crack out. And then I inserted a wood dowel with some this fiberglass that I got at the auto body shop. This stuff will really last forever. And then I epoxied it in place. And then when I was done, I just dressed it up with a Dremel. So it pretty much closed the crack. It strengthened the crack. And I also had a small piece here that it also had broken off at some point when I'd gotten the stock. It was just, you know, it was all covered in grease and stuff, and it just let go. So I saved that piece. I epoxied it back in place. I do have to dress it up a little bit here. So see some shiny spots, but I have to dress it up with a file. I'm going to use a file to kind of clean up some of these edges. Also, what was done was this piece ended up being like a couple millimeters higher. To me, that wasn't acceptable. You know, obviously I want this thing to be as perfect as possible. So what I just used was a straight flat file and just kind of filed everything down so it's nice and even. The biggest trick is going to be matching this color to this color. So what I'm going to probably do is go with a darker stain. I use the Phoebing's leather dye, and I'll show you how that's done when we get to that point. But I'm going to have to put more stain on this part to match this. But the whole goal is that it'll look like one-piece rifle stock, a one-piece one-piece rifle stock. I just said that when I'm done, instead of obviously a two-piece the way it was. So like I said, there's still some more cleaning and whatnot. I scrubbed a lot of this rust and all kinds of crud off of here. You know, I probably have to soak this a little bit more because there's going to be, you can see the dark areas. There's still, the stamps are still very faint, but they're there. I figure probably one or two more. I'm going to hit this area really hard with the scrubbing bubbles to try to get the rest of the cosmoline and grime out of there. And it might, if it doesn't work out as well as I had hoped, then I might actually hit that area with some wood bleach, which I've shown in previous videos on others rifle stocks, to kind of lighten everything up and match everything up. The main thing I'm worried is, not worried, but the thing I'm trying to focus is getting this part here as light and as clean as possible so that it closely resembles this. And once that's done, the stain will be nice and uniform, and then we'll top coat it, and it's pretty much ready to go. And then all that'd be left will be to drill the retainer pin hole there, and the retainer pin hole there, or the retainer screw hole actually, for the front barrel band. And I can show you that once I put it on. I'll just run it through my my drill press, and it's pretty much good to go. So like I said, it's coming along really nice. I'm happy with the contours. It's like it's even on both sides, which is what I was looking for. This I'll hit with a Dremel, dress it up, level this all out, and actually when I stain it, it won't look as bad. These lightning cuts that were in there do tend to give you not quite as much meat to work with as far as the wood. So that's why I ended up literally pouring a bunch of epoxy down in there and then putting layers of fiberglass to strengthen it up. But like I said, this thing is not going anywhere. There's no way I could probably, short of whacking it on the ground, which I really probably wouldn't recommend anyway. I don't think this thing will ever go anywhere. I think actually this repair will be pretty much permanent, which is what you're looking to do. So plus the fact that the barrel bands will hold everything in place, and you'll have that uniform strength once everything is attached back to the barrel itself. So like I said, stay tuned. We'll get this thing finished up and cleaned up and stained, and show you the final product, and we'll go from there. Thanks for watching. Hey YouTube, Military Gun Guy here. I'm back with the Krag rifle that we have been working on. I gotta orient my thing. It's been given pretty thorough sanding, clean the hell out of it. You can see where the color is actually a lot better matching. Try to preserve these stock marks as much as possible, especially this pea-proof over here. I gave it an extremely light sanding with a sanding block to just kind of knock down the grain and whatnot. Here's also, you may recall, this is the one, this is actually the repro stock that I refinished. There was really actually nothing wrong with this other than the fact that I didn't like the darkness of the wood. I know, which seems kind of stupid because the wood's dark, but it was extremely dark and I felt the color was quite unnatural. Here is some of the parts that I have rust blued and installed. Here's the trigger guard, came out quite nice. The rear band, or the rear sling swivel. This is also an 1898. The main difference you'll see is that since this is a repro, they cut this one out with the large U, whereas this one has the square notch. This is actually obviously an original. This is a repro, probably, you know, whatever. This one has the holes that have been drilled for the front band there, and I actually have to drill a hole for the rear band once I get it oriented and installed. For a relatively minor thing, actually what I'm going to be doing is just using an actual barrel band spring and just use the pin that comes in and just cut that off and then just install that there, and that keeps this piece from moving. So what we're going to be doing today is we are going to be staining this, and you've seen the procedure before. It's nothing new, using Fiebing's leather dye. I love this stuff because it's an alcohol stain. If for whatever reason you may have missed any if you've missed any of the, what do you call it, spots of oil or whatnot, unlike Minwax or any of the oil-based stains, this actually will penetrate. So you're just going to saturate your swab, and we're just going to go over it. I've already cleaned up the areas that needed to be cleaned up in terms of where I had been, where I put the epoxy for the repair. There was some cracks in the back that I didn't detail in the repair, but basically cracks that there was a crack that was running. It was right behind the action, which is quite common on a lot of military rifles. They get oil and they start to swell and split, and then they just kind of go to hell. So what I'm doing is just putting a nice even coat on this, and this will soak into the wood. With wood like this, you know, you can let it sit for 5-10 minutes or so, and then get an old rag and just basically wipe it off. I'm going to clean up this area just a little bit more later, but I want to mainly concentrate on this. The stock on this, obviously, the wood is the same, but this one is 100 years old, whereas the fore end is, you know, maybe only 5 years old or 2 years old or even a year old whenever they made it. So what the trick is to get your color on the piece of wood that you're trying to match. I would do that first, because if you're trying to match the lighter, newer wood, you're just going to be banging your head against the wall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this in there. I'm going to let it soak real good. And you can see how quickly it's soaking up a lot of the stain, which it will, because the stock has been chemically cleaned thoroughly, and it's actually quite thirsty right now. So any type of liquid or moisture is just going to soak right in. With the Fiebings, just as a reminder, this stuff stains like crazy. So my suggestion, my recommendation is to I put aluminum foil. While it does come up, it doesn't come up that easy. So you'll definitely want to get it, protect your work surface. So anyway, so this looks pretty nice and even. This is actually going to soak in a bit. So, and then with the Fiebings, you can just literally just hit up other areas if you want. So the nice thing about this is that once it is dry, if you don't like the darkness, you can hit it with some synthetic steel wool, and you can knock down the color a little bit. I'm actually going to put 2 coats. This is going to be a fairly dark rifle stock. But you can hit it with like a couple of coats. Or if you don't like the darkness, you can actually technically remove a coat. You can actually soak a rag in acetone and wipe it down, or you can very lightly scuff it and remove it that way. But if you recall, there was some repairs in here. There's a repair back there. All of this will be invisible once we top coat it. It's mostly invisible now. I'm just trying to be extremely thorough with the color because we're going to have to put several coats on that fore end to get that fore end to match properly. But the procedure is the same as I do on all my rifles. I put a nice, fairly thick, well, not thick so much of this is like a runny liquid, but a fairly heavy coat of the leather dye on there. Let it soak in, wipe it down. You can put it out in the sun if you want for a little bit, help it soak into the wood a little bit better. When I'm done with that, I just take a rag and just wipe it. And that gets a lot of the excess off. This stuff dries fast because it's an alcohol dye. So once the alcohol evaporates off, you will actually almost be ready for a top coat. With this one, I have to actually match it carefully because I don't, obviously it has been repaired, but on the outside I don't want it to look like it's been repaired. So you can see the major difference between the light and the dark. So what we'll do now is we'll start staining the fore end. And this will honestly probably require several coats just because, I mean, this is raw virgin wood and it's just going to soak and soak and soak and soak. With the thing with the phoebes, as you can with probably most other dyes, is you can mix it. So if you need something darker, you can mix it right away in a separate container and then just apply it as necessary. You know, you have to kind of adjust the color a little bit here and there, but it's not too bad, and it's actually fairly forgiving for the most part. Now, the one thing I do suggest is choosing your color carefully because this stuff actually stains the wood, and it's quite a process to get it back out of the wood if you, for whatever reason, don't like the color. Typical military rifles, I use the medium brown to the light brown. This rifle was done in a light brown, which gives it that reddish walnut look once it's top coated. This one's actually in a medium brown, which will give it kind of a darker, much darker, but again, we're trying to match that color. And you can see the first pass, there's still quite a difference between the dark and the light. So we'll let that soak in, and we'll just basically just keep soaking that thing in or keep hitting it until it doesn't soak in anymore. But you can also see where the repair is pretty much invisible, which is what you want. So I'm going to hit this several times. With this, instead of wiping it off, I'm just going to let it soak in. And this light, you can't really tell too well, but actually it does need several coats while this is wet. Probably, I'm guessing, maybe 3 coats, and then you can kind of evaluate it. Once that's done, I might hit it with very lightly with a synthetic wool pad, and that'll kind of even this area out. You can see where it's soaking in and it's starting to lighten up already, but some of these little darker areas are still a bit dark. But over time, actually, like I said, you can stick it out in the sun if you want it to help it soak it in. But right now, it's starting to look pretty even, which is what you want. You don't want your repair to look like it was repaired. You know, you want this thing to look like it was one piece of wood, you know, similar to this. And when they're done, it's hard to get this balance. When they're done, actually, this piece here will look as nice as this one here. So, and everything's like perfectly inletted for all the parts. So, when I come back, I'll keep hitting this because you don't want to sit and watch this thing stain. It's kind of boring. So when I come back, I'll show you the end result, and then we'll get it ready for top coat. All right, stay tuned. Okay, so here is the mostly final result. This is before we do any type of top coat. This is what we're looking for. You can tell that the color is almost matched perfectly. This was only about 1-2 coats. Ended up with 3 on this one. A couple of dark areas here and there, nothing major. Well, I might hit some of this with a very light synthetic steel wool to kind of even it out. Then it's just a matter of top coat, and this thing is good to go. So overall, very happy with the job. I'm going to clean this up just a little bit more, and I'm going to test fit with the barrel that I have. And so when this one will look just like this one. This will take on a bit of a sheen and actually have a nice kind of overall finish to it. But yeah, definitely took something that was sporterized and kind of junky and turned it into something useful. I won't bore you with the top coat procedure. I use a polyurethane. Probably just spray it really good, and then That's about it, actually. Spray it, let it dry, hit a couple times with synthetic steel wool, hit it, spray it one more time, and pretty much call it a day. So thanks for watching. I hope you learned something from this. You can always email me also at militarygunguy702@gmail.com. If you have any questions, I know I'm just pretty much a hand holding things like a hand model. But yeah, available for restorations and any other military firearm repair work that may be necessary. Thanks for watching.